You remember the email? The subject line was short. Too short to be bad news. Quick chat? You already knew what it meant. Your manager smiled more than usual. They leaned back. They said your name slowly, and then they said the word. Promotion. Your chest tightened. Not fear. Something better. Relief. Validation. Finally. This wasn't luck anymore. This was proof. You nodded. You thanked them. You acted calm. Inside, something stood up straight for the first time in a long while. Because this was the moment you were told to want. More responsibility, more money, more importance, winning, and for a while it felt exactly like that. Before we go any further, this is Donki. If you want calm, honest explanations about money, you're in the right place. I want to stay here for a moment. Not the celebration, not the LinkedIn post, not the congratulations. The quiet part that came later. The part where nothing was technically wrong. Your pay went up, your title got longer, people listened when you spoke, but your life didn't expand. It compressed, slowly, politely, without asking. At first it was small. You checked email earlier. You stopped leaving exactly at 5. You answered messages you used to ignore. You told yourself this was temporary. This was what growth felt like. I used to think this too, because no one warns you about this phase. They only talk about the moment you get promoted, not the months after. The subtle trades you never agreed to. Your calendar filled up. Your thinking time disappeared. Your job followed you home, quietly. And when something followed you home long enough, it stopped feeling like a visitor. It felt like ownership. Here's the strange part. From the outside, you looked more successful than ever. From the inside, you felt oddly smaller. Not overwhelmed, not burned out, just narrower. Fewer choices, fewer exits, fewer hours that were truly yours. But this didn't make sense because promotions are supposed to be upgrades. More pay should buy more freedom. More authority should buy more control. That's the deal we think we're signing. So when your life gets smaller instead, your brain looks for the wrong explanation. Maybe you're not managing your time well. Maybe you're not grateful enough. Maybe this is just the price of ambition. You don't question the promotion. You question yourself. That's where most people get stuck. Quietly blaming themselves for something structural. I remember realizing something was off the first time I said no to myself without noticing. A friend invited me out. I said, I can't. Busy week. That was true, but it wasn't forced. No one told me I couldn't go. I just didn't consider it an option. That scared me because the job wasn't demanding time anymore. It was shaping identity, and identity is expensive. The higher you climb, the more your role starts to leak into who you are. You don't just work as something, you are it. And once that happens, saying no feels risky. Not financially risky, existentially risky. If you don't show up, what does that say about you? If you don't perform, what happens to the version of you that finally made it? So you lean in, you work harder, you become reliable, you become essential. And this is where the contradiction sharpens. The more valuable you become to the system, the less flexible your own life feels. Your income improves, your optionality declines. No one says this out loud because promotions are framed as rewards. But rewards that remove freedom aren't rewards. They're exchanges. And most people don't realize they're negotiating. Think about how the promotion was offered. It wasn't, here's what you'll give up. It was, you've earned this. It was framed as recognition, not reallocation. Your labor didn't just increase. Your availability did. Your emotional bandwidth did. Your mental real estate did. Those aren't listed on a contract, But they're collected anyway, and because they're invisible, they feel like personal failure when they hurt. This is why promotions are intoxicating at first. They give you certainty in a world that feels unstable. A title, a number, a rung on the ladder. Something solid to stand on, but ladders only go one direction. Up looks like progress, down looks like failure. Sideways isn't discussed. And stopping feels illegal. So even when the ladder starts leaning into your personal life, you keep climbing. Because climbing is what winners do. That belief runs deep. I believed it. I believed that discomfort meant growth, that shrinking time was temporary, that this was just the hard part. But the hard part didn't end. It stabilized. And that's when it clicked for me. Not everything that feels like winning is actually expansion. Some wins just concentrate pressure. They narrow the space you're allowed to exist in. And the most dangerous ones are the wins you're proud of, because pride delays inspection. You don't question the thing that finally worked. You protect it, even if it quietly costs you things you can't name yet. This is why people defend promotions that make them miserable, because admitting the cost feels like admitting you made a mistake. And when your identity is attached to the win, mistakes feel personal, so you normalize it. You say things like, "This is just how it is at this level. Everyone goes through this. It'll be worth it later." Later becomes a moving target because the system doesn't reward relief. It rewards capacity. And capacity has no ceiling. The more you can carry, the more is placed on you, until your life is perfectly optimized for output, and almost nothing else. Here's the part that unsettles people. No one forced this. That's what makes it confusing. You accepted the promotion willingly. You smiled. You said thank you, which makes it hard to admit when it costs more. Then it pays. But that doesn't mean the trade was fair. It just means the terms weren't visible. Most people think promotions fail them because of workload. That's not the core issue. Workload is just the surface symptom. The real shift is something else. Something quieter. Something that changes how you see time, how you value yourself, and what you think you're allowed to want. But that part doesn't reveal itself early. It waits until the job feels bigger and your life feels contained. Until you realize the promotion didn't just change your role. It changed the shape of your days. And once your days change, your future quietly follows. That's where I'm going to pause, because if I go further now, it'll sound like advice. And this isn't advice yet. This is recognition. If this feels familiar, good. That means you're paying attention. Earlier, I said this wasn't about workload. That's still true, because plenty of people work long hours without feeling smaller. And plenty of people get paid more without feeling trapped. So what actually changed? It wasn't the number of tasks. It was the relationship between time and identity. That's the part promotions quietly rewire. Before the promotion, your job was something you did. After the promotion, your job became something you represented. And representation comes with expectations that don't clock out. This is the mechanism no one explains. Not because it's secret, but because it's uncomfortable. When you're promoted, your income doesn't just increase, your replacement cost increases. The organization now needs you, not just a role. That sounds flattering, but dependence works both ways. The more specific you become, the harder it is to step away without consequence. Not punishment, disruption. And disruption is what people fear most. So you start protecting continuity. You answer messages fast. You stay reachable. You smooth problems before they surface. Not because you're asked to. Because the role trained you to anticipate. This is where your life starts shrinking. Not because you lost time, because you lost permission. Permission to be unavailable. Permission to be inconsistent. Permission to be ordinary. Before, being offline was neutral. Now it's interpreted. Silence, means something. Delay means something. Absence feels loud. So even when nothing is demanded, you offer yourself preemptively. That's not ambition. That's risk management. You're managing the risk of being seen as replaceable. Here's the quiet irony. Promotions are supposed to reduce financial anxiety, but they often increase existential anxiety because the higher you go, the more your worth feels singular. And singular things are fragile. So you hold on tighter, you trade optionality for stability. But stability built on constant presence is brittle. It only works as long as you're there. This is why the promotion felt like winning at first. It gave you certainty, a structure, a story, a sense of arrival. But certainty can be deceptive because certainty doesn't mean freedom. It just means predictability. And predictability can feel safe until you realize you can't deviate without cost. Think about how you make decisions now. Not consciously, instinctively. You ask, how will this look? Is this worth the interruption? Can I afford the distraction? Those aren't time questions. They're identity questions. They come from a version of you that's optimizing for continuity, not life. This is where people misunderstand what's happening. They think the promotion took time away. No. It repriced time. Every hour now has an implied obligation attached. Not explicit. Implied. And implied obligations are the hardest to escape because you can't argue with them. You just feel them. This is why stepping back feels heavy. Not because you'll lose money immediately, but because you'll lose coherence. The story stops making sense. And humans cling to stories more than salaries. I stayed longer than I should have once. Not because I needed the money, because I didn't know how to explain leaving. Leaving would have meant rewriting the narrative I'd built about myself. And narratives are comfortable, even when they're confining. That's when I realized something that reframed everything. Promotions don't trap you with chains. They trap you with momentum. Once momentum builds, stopping feels like failure, even if stopping is the healthiest move available. This is why advice like, just set boundaries, falls flat. Boundaries don't work when identity is at stake. You can't boundary your way out of a story you're still inside. You have to see the story first. That's the delayed clarity. The reason promotions feel like winning until your life gets smaller is because they solve one problem while quietly creating another. They solve validation. They create attachment. And attachment always comes with cost. The higher the attachment, the higher the cost of change. This isn't an argument against promotions. It's an argument against confusing status with expansion. Some promotions expand money. Some expand authority. Very few expand freedom. Freedom requires slack. Slack requires redundancy. Redundancy looks inefficient, and efficiency is what promotions optimize against. So if you ever wondered why more money didn't buy more space, that's why. The system didn't reward you with freedom. It rewarded you with importance. And importance is heavy. Once you see this, something shifts. Not urgently, quietly. You stop asking, how do I manage this better? And start asking, what is this actually costing me? That question doesn't demand action. It demands honesty. And honesty changes how you see the ladder. You notice which rungs widen your life and which ones narrow it. You notice when a win is actually a trade. And trades aren't good or bad. They just need to be named. The danger isn't climbing. The danger is climbing blindly. Because when you don't see the exchange, you assume discomfort means growth. Sometimes it means compression. That's the distinction I wish I'd understood earlier. Growth adds dimensions. Compression concentrates pressure. They feel similar at first. They diverge later. If this made you uncomfortable, that's okay. Discomfort is often the first signal that something finally makes sense. Not because you need to quit anything, but because you can't unsee the mechanism now. And once you see it, you stop mistaking promotions for proof of progress. You start evaluating them for what they actually buy and what they quietly take. That awareness doesn't shout. It doesn't demand change. It just sits with you and reshapes how you choose. Slowly, honestly, irreversibly. There's one last layer people don't notice until much later, because it doesn't show up in calendars or paychecks. It shows up in how you imagine your future. After a promotion, the future narrows in a very specific way. Not smaller goals, clearer ones. You start projecting forward using the same ladder. Next title, next raise, next responsibility. The path becomes legible. And legible paths feel safe. But safety can quietly replace curiosity. You stop asking, what kind of life do I want? And start asking, what's the next logical step? Logic is efficient. It's also unimaginative. I didn't notice this until someone asked me a simple question. If this keeps going exactly like this, are you okay with where you'll be in 10 years? Not happier, not richer, just there. And I realized I hadn't pictured anything else. That's when it hit me. The promotion didn't just shrink my present. It borrowed from my future, because once your identity is built around momentum, alternative futures feel irresponsible. You start editing your dreams preemptively. That's unrealistic. That wouldn't make sense now. I can't afford the risk. Not financially, narratively. You've invested too much into the current story to abandon it. So even when opportunities appear, ones that would expand your life, they feel like threats. They disrupt the storyline. This is why people stay in roles they've outgrown. Not because they're stuck, because leaving would mean admitting the promotion wasn't pure upside, and that's hard to face, especially when everyone else still calls it a win. Here's the quiet truth. A promotion doesn't make your life smaller by force. It makes it smaller by default. If you don't actively reclaim space, the system fills it for you. Not maliciously, automatically. That's what systems do. They optimize for continuity, not meaning. So if this video did anything, I hope it wasn't motivation. I hope it was permission. Permission to question wins. Permission to inspect trades. Permission to notice when something praised externally feels costly internally. Because not all progress looks like more. Sometimes progress looks like room. Room to think. Room to choose. Room to imagine futures that don't fit neatly on a ladder. And that doesn't mean you step away tomorrow. It just means you stop confusing motion with expansion. Once you see that difference, your choices get quieter, slower, more deliberate, and your life stops shrinking without you noticing. That's enough for now. Sit with it. If it changed how you see your last promotion or the next one, then it did its job.